plastic is what got me into the water segment.
Your skin looks hydrated over Zoom. So it's obviously having a positive effect here.
For sure. From there to actually delivering the product, to getting the hardware, to talk to the firmware, to talk to the software for somebody that is not technically expert, that was really, really complicated. And so that I would say, the technical development, I would say, was really the biggest challenge that I've been facing. And, we're getting there.
Well, hello and welcome to The Stream, an unscripted, unedited, free-flowing conversation featuring guests who reject the status quo with a bias for action in the world of water and beyond. My name is Tom Freyberg. I'm an environmental journalist and content creator specializing in water.
And I'm Will Sarni, a water strategy consultant, doing my part to solve wicked water problems.
And today we are thrilled to be joined by Pierandrea Quarta, who is the CEO of REBO, tuning in from Switzerland. Pierre, good to see you. Come in. How are you doing?
Good to see you, Tom. Good to see you, Will. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So we've got a lot we want to talk to you about today. We want to kind of talk about moving into the hydration revolution, breaking free from a multinational to do your own startup and kind of life as an entrepreneur. Multiple things to kind of get through in the next 30 minutes. But maybe we could just kind of start with your former life, if you like, and your connection to water, because we had one of your colleagues on previously, right? Franz Besnick from Procter Gamble, who went on to found the 50 Litre Home Coalition. So there is already a connection to a previous guest, which is quite cool. So yeah, tell us about your former life and yeah.
Indeed. Franz was a colleague and we did some work together in the sustainability department of Procter Gamble. So my former life was to be a marketing manager, marketing director at Procter Gamble. I was running a brand called Head & Shoulders. And when I was there, I had the opportunity of doing different kinds of marketing. But at some point, I was assigned to lead sustainability for the brand. And I remember very well asking my boss, what does that mean? And she said, whatever you want it to mean. And so that was the best brief I could have imagined. And so together with the team, we put together brainstorming, had some ideas, and then came up with a concept of making a bottle of shampoo made out of plastic collected in the ocean. And the reason for that was in 2016, and that's when the Ellen MacArthur Foundation had come out with a big report on the new plastic economy, stating how bad the situation was and how we could end up having more plastic than fish in the ocean by 2050 if we didn't do anything about it. And so as the world's biggest shampoo brand, we thought, it makes sense to do something around plastic, at least to send a very strong message. And that strong message, hopefully, will inspire people to do more. And I think that was the case. We won a prize for the Momentum for Change Award of the United Nations, precisely for inspiring people to do something in that sector. So here you have it. This is the bottle of shampoo we made.
Wow.
It's gray because it's made out of plastic of all different colors that is just mixed together and put into a layer of this bottle. And so that previous life kind of really got me into the world of sustainability and made me realize how bad the situation is with respect to plastic waste. And, there is no other way of saying it, honestly. And so that really got me thinking and got me saying, there is an opportunity of doing something here that can have an impact, that can have a real positive impact. And there is also a consumer desire for solutions. And so I always wanted to create my own company. And I thought, well, that's the perfect combination, doing something that can have a positive impact in something which is where consumer desire and consumer, let's say, interest is growing. And so that's how I ended up getting into REBO. And plastic was kind of the segue to get into water, because as you look at the problem of plastic waste, you quickly realize as on consumer side, plastic water bottles are playing a very, very important role in a negative sense. We're using 1 million plastic water bottles every single minute. And there is a huge percentage that just ends up in the ocean, and a very tiny percentage, on the other hand, that gets recycled. So when I said I want to do something in this space, I was very quick in coming to the conclusion that water was perhaps the most impactful sector or segment I could get into with a product that could help cut down on the use of plastic, single-use plastic for drinking water.
Amazing. So that was back in 2016 when you launched the bottle. Was that right?
Yeah, I would say we started in 2016, and I believe we announced it in the World Economic Forum in 2017. It was the first project ever announced. I mean, it was the first product launch ever done in the World Economic Forum, and we did it in partnership with a company that is very dear to me, that is called TerraCycle. And Tom Zaki, their CEO, who's a great leader in sustainability.
Tom is, and certainly you, Tom, but Tom from TerraCycle is truly a disruptor in the field. I mean, I
couldn't agree more.
Just amazing guy, and he just keeps continuing to innovate and not just focusing on, what he launched a number of years ago, and really continues to be disruptive in a really good way. One thing, well, there are a number of things that are interesting about REBO to me, in part because I agree that this is a revolution in hydration. But you're coupling really two issues. One, the plastic waste in water bottles, but also health and wellness. The ability to, on a real-time basis, get more metrics on your health, and that's a really powerful intersection, because you can appeal to really two major groups.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's very well said, and I was going to get there, because in the end, plastic is what got me into the water segment.
So obviously you're marrying these two ideas of these two catalysts. One was seeing the impact of plastic waste on the environment. The second was a challenge of people being underhydrated. And you've kind of married them into the company. But maybe we could take a step back, because I'm really interested in that you're kind of setting out as the entrepreneur from Procter Gamble, and kind of how you brought that to life in terms of the product, getting the investment, getting the right people on board. Did you just kind of break free and thought, right, I'm going to make this happen? Or did you kind of put one foot into the water, found a kind of... tell us more about that kind of transition period. So I think that's what a lot of people want to hear more about.
So it's never easy to leave a comfortable corporate job and get in the world of entrepreneurship, particularly when you've never done it before, because it looks very sexy, I would say, from the outside, especially looking at successful entrepreneurs. But then the reality can be much harsher than anybody wishes it to be. So I of course, I started to do a bit of research, a bit of testing, and a bit of validation before I got into it. I mean, before I quit the job to get into it. But at some point, I just realized, if I really want to do it for real, I need to really try. And that really trying means just dedicating myself 100% to this. So I decided to do that. And I remember this kind of beautiful feeling at the beginning, which very quickly became a bit of, what did I do? How
the euphoria gets overtaken by complete panic and being overwhelmed and spinning 101 plates, right?
For sure. And a lot of complexity, particularly in the case of my product, because, it's kind of marrying a physical product with hardware, with software, and with a kind of novel certification that I wanted to do. So there were a lot of elements here to be taken into account. And, I'm not an engineer. And the people I started to do the company with, my co-founders, were not engineers either. And so quickly I realized, wow, I actually don't know how to create the product that I want to create. And so that's when the kind of research came. And I remember looking for, companies or people or organizations that could support me with this technical development. And then eventually I stumbled into a company that is today my strategic partner, sits on the board, and even investor. And that company is a company that I used to work with at P&G, and it's called Aptar. So it's an American company that makes caps. Makes caps, plastic caps, single-use plastic caps, which is right.
Right. How ironic, Pierre.
In a certain sense. Well, but and we can get to this. I really believe in the power of partnerships to change the course of things. But they brought a lot of food and beverage expertise. They brought a lot of technical expertise, even in terms of connected items, and it's been very, very enabling and helpful to kind of make all this happen. And that was a great way also to get more funding, to get partnerships, to get lots of other things that have been flowing since I managed to actually create a product.
It strikes me that in a lot of ways, that's exactly the partner that you want. So it's the company that is, mainstream and is introduced to something that, is driving sustainability. I mean, I always want to talk to people that are either skeptics or know nothing about it, because that's a bigger leap forward than, an echo chamber, if you will.
Yeah. Will, I remember you and I having a chat some time ago about the impact that you can have with partnerships with companies that today are the big polluters. They are the bad ones, let's say. And the truth is, big companies are the ones that can really drive the change, and the ones that should drive the change. So if we can help them to do that, and if we can partner to enable them to accelerate that transition, then I think there's a lot of great things that can come out of there.
Well, they have the scale and the resources and the finance to sort of take what was just a startup, and you said you were lacking the engineering capability, so presumably they could bring in that resource to help you where you needed it to, right?
Yeah. I mean, we did find somebody also on our side, but yes, I mean, they were extremely supportive and helpful, particularly in getting specific knowledge on the beverage market, because designing disclosure, the way it's done, the way it opens, the way the spout is and all that, it's no easy job. And so if you have one of the best specialists in the world to do that, well, for sure you can do a better job than you would have without them. Right.
But that's the role of a good entrepreneur, is you see where there's a weakness in your team, and you're kind of filling that void by hiring the right people or partnering with the company to deliver those skill sets, right? So where are you? That was a few years ago. So where are you now as a business then, in terms of scale, size, investment, the amount of employees you have?
And also, Pierre, not to, I don't want you to say anything that you can't, that's not public, but, also some of the challenges of that journey,
Yeah. And so I'll get there, I'll tell you where I am today with a quick kind of path of how I got there. So, think about it. We launched this company and we started developing the product right when COVID started. So it was really hard because our production happens in China, which is where the very big majority of stainless steel bottles are made, where a lot of the microchips and semiconductors are coming from. And so that's why we decided, also from a sustainability standpoint, to centralize it all in the same place. But that was a place we could not travel to. We have never met physically with our business partner there. So we were trying to run this kind of hardware development at distance. And I mean, we did it in the end, but I guess it took much longer than it would have if we had been able to just fly there and be present sometimes. So that was definitely a very big challenge. Testing with consumers was another one, because there were moments when people were just literally locked down at home. So testing a product, understanding their feedback, getting them to try it was not that much of a simple thing. Of course, there is digital ways of doing it, but it just makes it slower and perhaps complex sometimes. But after a couple of years, we're finally in a place where we have launched a crowdfunding campaign. So before we kind of got into producing this and finished the development, we wanted to make sure people were interested in it. And so we launched a crowdfunding campaign, which enabled us to get a bit of consumer feedback traction, and to make sure that there was real interest for what we were thinking about building. So we pre-sold roughly $250,000 of worth of bottles in a couple of months. And that was, a good validation, a good base of consumers, and also some cash that could help with the development. But then from there, to actually delivering the product, to getting the hardware, to talk to the firmware, to talk to the software for somebody that is not technically expert, that was really, really complicated. And so that, I would say, the technical development, I would say, was really the biggest challenge that I've been facing. And we're getting there. But even after 2 years of development, we have now a product on the market that we're happy with, but it's just not as good as we wanted it to be, because the production quality is not necessarily the one we wanted. Maybe we had to compromise on a few things. But still, we're in the market now. So to answer your question, Tom, we're in the market. There is about 10,000 products that have been delivered to consumers. We've done a great partnership with Adidas. Adidas is a leading sports brand player that kind of wanted to get more into the world of sustainability. I mean, they are kind of a leader in the space of sustainability, but they saw this as an opportunity of further strengthening this, particularly in the way that this could connect also to all the wellness information that is generated from different apps to make sure that sport is done in the right way. And so, there was a great potential role of REBO to play in the Adidas ecosystem. So we agreed on launching a limited edition together, which did very well. And now we're looking into, with Adidas and beyond, but we're looking into kind of the real commercial strategy of how to make this big and how to make sure that, consumer actually love it. Because that's what we really wanted to do, create a consumer lovable product.
I think there's a really interesting potential here for connecting through to, you mentioned the partnership with Adidas, but other apps as well, right? In terms of the official word is interoperability. But I think when I do a workout, I log it all on my watch, which has its own app and ecosystem. It tells me the calories, everything. But obviously the ability to connect with your systems, tell me, well, today you've run for an hour, whatever. An hour's pushing it these days. I never run for an hour. But you should be drinking more because effectively, you're more underhydrated. So how is that kind of part of the future of the business, connecting with Garmin and Strava and all that side of things, right?
Yeah, there is this great book that I guess every entrepreneur either has read or should read. It is called The Lean Startup. And it's about how you try to kind of go to the bare minimum at the beginning, to you kind of give priority to speed to market rather than making the perfect product. And so we're trying to do that. Although they talk about minimum viable product, which we like to talk about minimum lovable product because you want to make sure that it's still good enough to be loved by people.
Right.
But the reason why I'm mentioning this is because, of course, we wanted to integrate with every single app on the market. But, just the work of doing that would have been
of course.
Perhaps 2 more years of development. So in the end, the kind of compromise was we synchronized with Apple Health and with Google Fit, which they are the most widespread. And so it may be that if you are an iPhone user, the activity that you log into your phone will be transferred into Apple Health. And if that is the case, then we will take that with our app and we will dynamically adjust your hydration goal according to your physical activity. Cool. So that's happening today already.
Great.
So, this morning I walked 10,000 steps and I had to drink, I believe, something like 300 ml more to compensate for the dehydration associated with that walking.
That's very cool. So it's basically in real time linking between the activity being tracked by another device into the ecosystem you're creating there.
That's right. And, in the moment we can talk to Garmin directly, I think it will make it even more accurate and even better. Yeah. But, to start, there was a good compromise that we could find.
I love the minimum lovable product. I think that's brilliant. You are a marketing guy.
Well, but that's precisely the thing. I think minimum viable makes a lot of sense in kind of B2B software. But if you think about an end product, you want it to be lovable because otherwise it kind of, as a marketer, you're like, no, I'm not doing what I'm meant to do.
So your marketing background must have come in really helpful for the crowdfunding campaign, where essentially you need to get your messaging right. You need to try and reach a lot of people with to try and raise the capital from different people. So talk us through, because we've spoken in the past, Will, right, to people who have been quite successful with crowdfunding water tech and others not so much. Right. And they said it's all around the communication, the campaign to get people behind it, right? So clearly the messaging on helping to reduce plastic waste, helping to be a part of the hydration revolution must have sort of struck a chord because you had a $250,000 target and you hit it. So
yeah. So Tom, I think there's a lot of learnings, and I could talk about crowdfunding for 5 episodes if you wanted to. But I think the ones that I would take away is the messaging in crowdfunding is very specific and is very much focused on what the product does and why the product is great. And so we kind of made a mistake at the beginning because we spoke too much about the problem of plastic waste. We spoke too much about all the harm we were doing. And
really, and that didn't resonate. So you actually had to dial it in on the product itself. All right.
Correct. I mean, so people were a bit put off by, I'm good. I don't want you to tell me so many bad news about the situation of plastic. Right. Tell me what I can do to make it better. So, in the end, it's a matter of balance. So instead of being 30% of the video at the beginning on the problem, you would just want it to be 5 to 10%. and then really focus on all the good things that the product can bring. So that was a learning, for example.
Yeah.
And the other learning on crowdfunding is it's really hard to get money on crowdfunding if you don't spend money, as sad as it sounds. But you need digital marketing in order to make your crowdfunding campaign work, because otherwise, the days of getting organic traction of campaigns is they're long gone, unfortunately. So yeah.
Yeah, Pierre, you bring up a really important point, and one thing that I see in the other dimensions of the hydration revolution, which is if you're leading with the whole plastic waste crisis, that's sort of limited. But if you really touch on the water is safe to drink, it tastes great, and you're reducing plastic waste in the environment, then people have more of a attraction to that.
Mm-hmm.
It's that love piece. It's like, oh yeah, okay, great, I'm doing something for me, and it has an added benefit.
But there's also something to be said about being a first adopter, right? You could trial version 1 of the product to test it. There's something quite, people like the tech crowd fused with the environmental kind of conscious crowd. That's something to be part of the solution, right? So it's quite interesting as part of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think by definition, if you go on crowdfunding, you're really going to those super early adopters, because that's the kind of people that will buy on crowdfunding. So it's a great thing, because then you can use those people as, kind of a testing ground, and you can ask them questions, and you can engage to kind of solve challenges or whatever it is. So that's really interesting. And
well, they've sort of got skin in the game, right? So it's within their interest to test it and give feedback back to you. Yeah. So it's kind of the active consumer as part of the product testing.
For sure. And they have passion for that as well.
Yeah.
So
cool. So obviously we've talked about the quantity of water side in terms of getting data on hydration, how much you should be drinking. But how do you see REBO kind of playing a part then as part of the ecosystem when it comes to water quality? So putting in additional treatment if needed, because that's not something you're going to push into, right? In terms of having additional filtration as part of your bottle. You actually want to leave that to either water utilities where there's a well-functioning system, or additional water kiosks when more filtration is needed.
Yeah, I mean, we decided to launch a product that does not do filtration because we're providing other benefits that we thought were very relevant for consumers. Now, it's really hard to say which one is more relevant and when is the right time for which. But what we see in the market is that there is 3 main forces that are happening. I mean, consumers are trying to change. So they're switching as much as they can, in some cases significantly, from single-use kind of solutions into more durable ones. And they're doing this by also equipping their houses and equipping their offices with solutions that enable them not to use those single-use plastic bottles. I think there is a public push as well in banning plastic in a lot of places, single-use plastic of different kinds, but also in improving the quality of water that you can get out of your tap. I think there is a law from there's a European Commission kind of directive that gets countries to improve the quality of water in their pipes, and so that will help significantly in a transition to a less dependent economy and single-use solutions. And then last but not least, there is a big push from the private sector as well. So if you look at the big companies, I mean, the market of water bottles is dominated by Nestle, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and Danone. So if you look at these 4 companies, they are all to a bigger or smaller extent trying to find solutions to look into different ways of providing hydration to people. These are often resulting in out-of-home dispensing solutions. So they're like water kiosks, water stations, water ATMs, dispensing water machines. You can call them in different ways. But essentially what they are is a next generation of vending machines, where instead of selling you the bottle with the liquid, they would just sell you the liquid. And then liquid needs a bottle, of course, in order to capture it. And so that's really the kind of transition in which we want to play. And what is really interesting about these machines is they're not necessarily just giving water, but they will give you water with electrolytes, with vitamins, with flavors, with carbonation, and with different things. So as a matter of fact, these can really be a great alternative to soft drinks. So eventually pushing the boundaries also on the health of people in terms of what they drink. So perhaps swapping a whatever soft drink without naming it which is very with a very high quantity of sugars, for something which is simply lime flavored with magnesium and carbonation,
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big trends. It's the movement to diversify beverages and hydration in a lot of different ways. So, the water fountain is dead. So, water kiosks are replacing them that provide assurance of safety and treatment, but also, carbonated, still flavored, whatever it may be, coupled with, a portable system, replacing the PET bottle or recycled PET bottle.
Yeah. And, if I can further build on this, I mean, I think what's really interesting, there's been a few articles that have been showing how big corporations have been setting very aggressive sustainability targets, in terms of the percentage of post-recycled plastic that they integrate in their products, in terms of different targets in different ways. Now, if you look at the kind of goals that they have for 2025 and where they are today, you see actually that very little progress has been made, and there is still a long way. So I think these kind of things are creating a very fertile ground for disruptive innovation, because big corporations will have the tendency, for what I know from my previous life, to kind of stick to their business model and just make it less bad or more adapted to the sustainability targets and challenges. I think in the moment you realize that you cannot meet those targets, that's when you need to think differently, and that's when you need to think about very disruptive solutions. So that's just a further context to push solutions like these water stations that we're talking about.
We're not going to solve the plastic crisis by banning straws, right? To sum up shortly, but there needs to be a systemic change, particularly in countries where there's a lack of waste management infrastructure to even collect the waste materials and the plastic that's out there, right? So in terms of the role of multinationals helping to fund the right policy, helping to fund the right infrastructure in the countries where this plastic's just escaping into the environment, there's a role to play there as well. It's such a huge environmental challenge that, we need to, it's more than just, we've put a ban on plastic straws and a levy on plastic bags. We've done enough. No, it needs to go much farther than that, right?
Yeah, it's rethinking packaging,
Right.
Really. I mean, that's what, MacArthur Foundation is all about. It's really that movement, and what Tom does at TerraCycle.
Yeah. If I can just build on that, I think what's interesting is a lot of times we talk about the big polluters. They tend to be in Southeast Asia. Those countries that are said to be the biggest contributor to the problem of ocean plastic, because there is a lot of plastic that leaks into the ocean from those countries. And so that is true to a certain extent, to the point you were making before, Tom, because there is no waste management facilities that are good enough to prevent that plastic from leaking into the environment. But the sad bit of that part is that a lot of that plastic that leaks into the environment is actually exported from countries that would have those waste management facilities.
Yeah.
And so, there was a recent case about the UK exporting to Turkey. The US has been exporting a lot of that into Southeast Asia following the ban that arrived from China. So, I'm saying this because a lot of times the poorer countries with little waste management get a lot of the blame.
100%,
but a lot of times the ones to blame are the more developed ones that are just taking advantage of that because they don't know what to do with their waste.
There's also another piece of the puzzle here. I mean, if you look at, how that part of the world or parts of the world access safe drinking water, they don't have the infrastructure that, we see in Europe or, North America. So, PET bottles, or trucked in water is part of the solution. So, these two issues are linked. And if we solve universal access to safe drinking water, we will have an impact on alternative delivery systems, which, most commonly it's the, plastic bottle.
You're right.
Yeah, it's such a multifaceted problem, isn't it? And it's both great comments, but I think developing domestic capacity to treat and recycle plastics back into the system, as opposed to shipping them off to countries that have less infrastructure, is a fundamental part of the solution as well. So,
right.
Good. Well, Pier, that half an hour has absolutely flown by. Like you say, we could have carried on talking. I'm sure I'd love to find out more about the crowdfunding campaign, because I'm sure there's more you can share there. So yeah, you'll have to come back on one of the next seasons to share progress of how you're getting on. So listen, congratulations on what you've done so far. I think the fact, as you said, you've been building it throughout arguably some of the toughest environments in the last couple of years through the pandemic, right? Building the team and the business. So congratulations to where you've got to, and continuing to sort of drive the hydration revolution. So yeah, great to have you on. Will, any concluding comments from you?
Yeah, I need to go hydrate now. Lesson learned. Thanks for the reinforcement. And I really think the minimum lovable product is brilliant. I mean, because that's how we're going to engage consumers on being part of the solution, and not just change behavior, but drive innovation into, multinationals that are up for it. So those are my two takeaways.
Great stuff. Pier, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. And
Pier, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. We'll catch up soon.
All right.
Very well.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.